Well, today in the Capitol Rotunda, lawmakers marked the Holocaust Museum's National Days of Remembrance. President Trump delivered remarks during the ceremony.
Survivors of the Holocaust, museum friends, distinguished guests, welcome to this ceremony and this magnificent rotunda. Some may ask why we remember the Holocaust in this Hall of Democracy in the capital of the free world. Or for that matter, why is there a Holocaust museum on our National Mall? The answer lies in the fact that this great country was founded on an idea, one of the most consequential ideas in human history. That idea is represented in this majestic space and engraved at one entrance to the museum, where visitors encounter some of the most important words ever written about our national values. They begin, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." The Declaration of Independence was perhaps the very first human rights proclamation, and universal freedom is at the heart of our democracy. This house of the democracy is situated at one end of the mall, and at the other end sits the Lincoln Memorial. Midway between is our museum, whose lessons stand as a cautionary tale in stark contrast to the rest of the mall. As one U.S. Senator said shortly after the museum opened, the Washington Monument has never looked quite so beautiful as it does now that it stands next to the Holocaust Museum. For the Holocaust teaches us that freedom is fragile and that each of us must be vigilant in protecting it. With freedom comes responsibility. Weimar Germany was an advanced, educated nation with a democratic constitution and a free press. That's why the challenge to civilization that the Nazis represented reminds us that it is not enough to cherish our national ideals. We must be ever wary of human nature and constantly work to advance those ideals. Sometimes we must fight and sacrifice for those ideals. Over 16 million Americans fought in World War II, and more than 400,000 gave the ultimate sacrifice in order to defeat Nazism and fascism. As we watch the flags of each of the U.S. Army divisions that liberated the concentration camps enter the rotunda, we remember that the brave young soldiers who freed Europe, ended the Holocaust, and preserved American democracy. To paraphrase General Dwight Eisenhower's stunned reaction upon seeing the newly liberated camp at Ohrdruf, it's important to know not only what we are fighting for, we must also know what we are fighting against. So the young servicemen and women who will shortly present these divisional flags remind us of the catastrophic events of the past and the daunting challenges of the present. On this day of remembrance, we remember the victims, and we remember those who liberated them. And we must also remember that today our world faces new threats and a new extremist ideology, and that young Americans are yet again on the front lines of freedom. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presentation of the flags of the United States Army Liberating Divisions, followed by the national colors. First Infantry Division, Falkenau an der Eger. 101st Airborne Division, Landsberg. 2nd Infantry Division, Leipzig, Schönfeld, and Sperrgau. 82nd Airborne Division, Verblin. 4th Infantry Division, Dachau Subcamps, 20th Armored Division, Dachau. 8th Infantry Division, Verblin. 14th Armored Division, Dachau Subcamps. 26th Infantry Division, Gusen. 12th Armored Division, Landsberg. 29th Infantry Division, Dinslaken. 11th Armored Division, Gusen and Mauthausen. 30th Infantry Division, Pfefferlingen. 10th Armored Division, Landsberg. 69th Infantry Division, Leipzig-Tekla. 104th Infantry Division, Dora Mittelbau. 71st Infantry Division, Gunskirchen. 103rd Infantry Division, Landsberg. 80th Infantry Division, Buchenwald and Ebensee. 99th Infantry Division, Dachau Subcamps. 83rd Infantry Division, Langenstein. 95th Infantry Division, Werl. 84th Infantry Division, Allum and Salzwedel. 90th Infantry Division, Flossenburg. 86th Infantry Division, Attendorn. 89th Infantry Division, Ohrdruf. Please remain standing for the presentation of the national colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose vast stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, all the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air. that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador Ron Dermer of the State of Israel.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and above all, the survivors and their families who are here with us today. This is the first Holocaust Remembrance Day without the man who implored the world never to forget. Elie Wiesel's gentle voice and towering conscience are no longer here to remind us, to teach us, to challenge us, and to inspire us. But his powerful words remain with us. Perhaps the most powerful of all was his insight that the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. Like so much else during the Holocaust, words like love, hate, and indifference took on a sharper meaning. The Holocaust laid bare the unimaginable hatred of Hitler, Himmler, Eichmann, and all those who ordered, planned, and carried out the final solution. It unleashed the horrors of the gas chambers, the cruelty of Mengele, and the bloodlust of willing executioners who filled mass graves across Europe. But the Holocaust also revealed how deep the love of a parent, a child, a brother, a sister, a friend, a neighbor, and even a stranger could be. There was a Schindler, a Wallenberg, a Sugihara, and a Contreras. There was American prisoner of war, Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds, who in a single moment of courageous defiance saved 200 Jewish American soldiers. And there were thousands more righteous among the nations who risked their lives to save Jews. The Holocaust also gave new meaning to the word indifference. In 1944, Jewish leaders pleaded with the Allied powers to bomb the tracks to the death camps. At a time when as many as 10,000 Jews were being gassed to death every day in Auschwitz, a U.S. official infamously responded that such bombing, quote, might provoke even more vindictive action by the Germans. Allied leaders knew of the Holocaust as early as 1942. Millions might have been saved had action been taken sooner. Wasn't. It's back on many others. A world that promised never again to sit idly by, sat idly by in Cambodia, in Rwanda, in Sudan, and elsewhere. History shows that indifference has been the exception, not the rule. The exceptions have been the decisions like the one President Trump made to respond to a chemical attack by the Assad regime against innocent men, women, and children. That decision was a defiance of indifference. And if evil triumphs when good men do nothing, we should all seek to live in a world that defies indifference. Those contemplating evil should know that they will face more than the soft power of self-righteous condemnations and feel-good hashtags. They should know that they will face the hard power of a civilized world prepared to use military might to confront barbarism. To those who argue that such action will not solve complicated problems, there is a simple answer. The fact that we could not do everything is not an argument for doing nothing. Or, as a sage of my people said long ago, while it is not our responsibility to finish the work, we are not free to desist from that work either. Ladies and gentlemen, for the Jewish people, the indifference of the world during the Holocaust must never be forgotten. We must remember that 75 years ago, we were a stateless and powerless people who begged in vain for presidents and prime ministers to come to our rescue. We must remember that as the Jews of Europe were being cast into ovens, those fleeing the flames had no refuge. We must remember that 1.5 million Jewish children were murdered in an indifferent world. The Jewish people must always remember, for then we will better appreciate the meaning of Israel, the country I am privileged to represent here today. On Holocaust Remembrance Day, more than any other day, Israel is the Jewish people's defiance of an indifferent world. For 2,000 years, we prayed and dreamed to return to our homeland, restore our sovereignty, and rebuild Jerusalem. We kept that dream alive despite history throwing our way every evil under the sun. And over a half-century before the Holocaust, one force that propelled modern Zionism was a determination to make that dream a reality in a world indifferent to anti-Semitism. The Holocaust, ladies and gentlemen, turned that determination into a sacred mission to defy the world's indifference, establish a Jewish state, and secure the Jewish future. For 69 years, Israel has defied the world's indifference by gathering our exiles from the four corners of the earth, by transforming a barren land into a global technological power, and by building a vibrant democracy that stands as a beacon of freedom, decency, and compassion in a dark and cruel region. But above all, Israel has defied the world's indifference by transforming a powerless people marked for annihilation into a sovereign nation capable of defending itself. So today, let us remember the love, the hate, and the indifference. Let us heed the words of Leviticus, Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. Do not stand idly by the blood of thy neighbor. Let us work for a world that defies indifference. And may Israel continue to defy indifference. On this day, above all days, Israel pledges to continue to stand strong and proud, remembering the past, grateful for the present, and more determined than ever to build a brilliant future. Yehi zichram baruch. May the memory of the 6 million be blessed.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Bloomfield, Director of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum.
Mr. Vice President, distinguished guests, and above all, our very cherished Holocaust survivors. 38 years ago yesterday, America's first national commemoration of the Holocaust took place in this very rotunda. On April 24th, 1979, the idea to build a United States Holocaust Memorial Museum was just that, an idea. At the time, there was a presidential commission to study how our nation should remember the Holocaust. The commission, which eventually recommended the creation of an educational museum and this commemoration, was chaired by Elie Wiesel. He spoke at every single annual commemoration in the early years, and most recently in 2009. And now Elie is gone. As a tribute to his singular leadership and to all the survivors, I would like to share with you selections from his remarks of 38 years ago. Friends, what does one do with such memories of fire, with so many fragments of despair? How does one live in a world which witnessed the murder of 1 million children? Those of us who were there are haunted by those whose lives were turned into ashes, by those whose cemetery was the sky. I belong to a traumatized generation, Jewish victims stripped of their identity and disowned by the whole world. Every occupied nation, every underground movement received help from London, Washington, or Moscow. Not the Jews. They were the loneliest victims. The world knew and kept silent. And yet, when the nightmare lifted, there was no hate in the hearts of those who survived, only sadness, and paradoxically, hope. For some reason, they were convinced that out of grief and so much suffering, a powerful message of compassion and justice would be heard and received. They were convinced that after Auschwitz, people would no longer yield to fanaticism, nations would no longer wage war, and racism, anti-Semitism, and class humiliation would be shamed forever. The survivors advocated hope, not despair. Their testimony contains neither rancor nor bitterness. They knew too well that hate is self-debasing and vengeance self-defeating. Instead of choosing nihilism and anarchy, they chose to opt for man. Instead of setting cities on fire, they enriched them. Many went on to build an ancient dream of Israel. They chose to remain human and to fight for human rights. For we have learned certain lessons. We have learned not to be neutral in times of crisis, for neutrality always helps the aggressor, never the victims. We have learned that silence is not the answer. We have learned that the opposite of love is not hatred, but indifference. What is memory if not a response to and against indifference? So let us remember, for their sake and ours, let us remember the heroes of Warsaw, the martyrs of Treblinka, the children of Auschwitz. They fought alone, they suffered alone, they lived alone, but they did not die alone, for something in all of us died with them. Today, we pledge to Elie Wiesel, to all the survivors and the victims, we shall always remember for your sake and for ours.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Friends, members of Congress, ambassadors, veterans, and most especially to the survivors here with us today, it's an honor to join you on this very, very solemn occasion. I'm deeply moved to stand before those who survived history's darkest hour. Your cherished presence transforms this place into a sacred gathering. Thank you, Tom Bernstein, Alan Holt, Sarah Bloomfield, and everyone at the Holocaust Memorial Council and Museum for your vital work and tireless contributions. We are privileged to be joined by Israel's ambassador to the United States, friend of mine. He's done a great job and said some wonderful words, Ron Dermer. The State of Israel is an eternal monument to the undying strength of the Jewish people, the fervent dream that burned in the hearts of the oppressed is now filled with the breath of life, and the Star of David waves atop a great nation arisen from the desert. To those in the audience who have served America in uniform, our country eternally thanks you. We are proud and grateful to be joined today by veterans of the Second World War who liberated survivors from the camps. Your sacrifice helped save freedom for the world, for the entire world. Sadly, this year marks the first day of remembrance since the passing of Elie Wiesel, a great person, a great man. His absence leaves an empty space in our hearts, but his spirit fills this room. It is the kind of gentle spirit of an angel who lived through hell and whose courage still lights the path from darkness. Though Elie's story is very well known by so many people, it's always worth repeating. He suffered the unthinkable horrors of the Holocaust. His mother and sister perished in Auschwitz. He watched his father slowly dying before his own young eyes in Buchenwald. He lived through an endless nightmare of murder and death, and he inscribed on our collective conscience the duty we have to remember that long, dark night so as never to again repeat it. The survivors in this hall, through their testimony, fulfilled the righteous duty to never forget and engrave into the world's memory the Nazi genocide of the Jewish people. You witnessed evil, and what you saw is beyond description, beyond any description. Many of you lost your entire family, everything and everyone you loved gone. You saw mothers and children led to mass slaughter. You saw the starvation and the torture. You saw the organized attempt at the extermination of an entire people, and great people, I must add. You survived the ghettos, the concentration camps, and the death camps, and you persevered to tell your stories. You tell of these living nightmares because despite your great pain, you believe in Elie's famous plea that for the dead and the living, we must bear witness. That is why we are here today, to remember and to bear witness, to make sure that humanity never, ever forgets. The Nazis massacred 6 million Jews. 2 out of every 3 Jews in Europe were murdered in the genocide. Millions more innocent people were imprisoned and executed by the Nazis without mercy, without even a sign of mercy. Yet even today, there are those who want to forget the past. Worse still, there are even those filled with such hate, total hate, that they want to erase the Holocaust from history. Those who deny the Holocaust are an accomplice to this horrible evil and will never be silent. We just won't. We will never, ever be silent in the face of evil again. Denying the Holocaust is only one of many forms of dangerous anti-Semitism that continues all around the world. We've seen anti-Semitism on university campuses, in the public square, and in threats against Jewish citizens. Even worse, it's been on display in the most sinister manner when terrorists attack Jewish communities or when aggressors threaten Israel with total and complete destruction. This is my pledge to you. We will confront anti-Semitism. We will stamp out prejudice. We will condemn hatred. We will bear witness, and we will act. As President of the United States, I will always stand with the Jewish people, and I will always stand with our great friend and partner, the State of Israel. So today we remember the 6 million Jewish men, women, and children whose lives and dreams were stolen from this earth. We remember the millions of other innocent victims the Nazis so brutally targeted and so brutally killed. We remember the survivors who bore more than we can imagine. We remember the hatred and evil that sought to extinguish human life, dignity, and freedom. But we also remember the light that shone through the darkness. We remember sisters and brothers who gave everything to those they loved. Survivors like Stephen Springfield, who in the long death march carried his brother on his back. As he said, "I just couldn't give in." We remember the brave souls who banded together to save the lives of their neighbors, even at the risk of their own life. And we remembered those first hopeful moments of liberation when at long last the American soldiers arrived in camps and cities throughout occupied Europe, waving the same beautiful flags before us today, speaking those three glorious words, "You are free." It is this love of freedom, this embrace of human dignity, this call to courage in the face of evil, that the survivors here today have helped to write onto our hearts. The Jewish people have endured oppression, persecution, and those who have sought and planned their destruction. Yet through the suffering, they have persevered, they have thrived, and they have enlightened the world. We stand in awe of the unbreakable spirit of the Jewish people. I want to close with a story enshrined in the museum that captures the moment of liberation in the final days of the war. It is the story of Gerda Klein, a young Jewish woman from Poland. Some of you know her. Gerda's family was murdered by the Nazis. She spent 3 years imprisoned in labor camps and the last 4 months of the war on a terrible death march. She assumed it was over. At the end, on the eve of her 21st birthday, her hair had lost all of its color, and she weighed a mere 68 pounds. Yet she had the will to live another day. It was tough. Gerda later recalled the moment she realized that her long-awaited deliverance had arrived. She saw a car coming towards her. Many cars had driven up before, but this one was different. On its hood, in place of that wretched swastika, was a bright, beautiful, gleaming white star. 2 American soldiers got out. One walked up to her. The first thing Gerda said was what she had been trained to say. "We are Jewish, you know. We are Jewish." And then he said, "So am I." It was a beautiful moment after so much darkness, after so much evil. As Gerda took this soldier to see other prisoners, the American did something she had long forgotten to even expect. He opened the door for her. In Gerda's words, that was the moment of restoration, of humanity, of humanness, of dignity, and of freedom. But the story does not end there, because as some of you know, that young American soldier who liberated her and who showed her such decency would soon become her husband. A year later, they were married. In her words, he opened not only the door for me, but the door to my life and to my future. Gerda has since spent her life telling the world of what she witnessed. She, like those survivors who are among us today, has dedicated her life to shining a light of hope through the dark of night. Your courage strengthens us. Your voices inspire us. And your stories remind us that we must never, ever shrink away from telling the truth about evil in our time. Evil is always seeking to wage war against the innocent and to destroy all that is good and beautiful about our common humanity. But evil can only thrive in darkness. And what you have brought us today is so much more powerful than evil. You have brought us hope, hope that love will conquer hatred, that right will defeat wrong, and that peace will rise from the ashes of war. Each survivor here today is a beacon of light, and it only takes one light to illuminate even the darkest space. Just like it takes only one truth to crush 1,000 lies and one hero to change the course of history. We know that in the end, good will triumph over evil, and that as long as we refuse to close our eyes or to silence our voices, we know that justice will ultimately prevail. So today we mourn, we remember, we pray, and we pledge never again. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alan Holt, Vice Chairman of the United States Holocaust Memorial Council.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Vice President, distinguished guests, and of course, our survivors. We come together to remember, because the act of remembrance must not be about memory alone. It must also educate. It must answer the question, why remember? It has often been said that without understanding our past, we diminish our capacity to confront the present and shape the future. For most of you here today, the Holocaust is the past. It's history. But for the survivors, and for me, it is never past. It is always present memory. My parents, born in different parts of Poland, managed to survive the Holocaust. Their survival, as was true of everyone's survival, was miraculous. Between the two of them, they experienced and endured many infamous sights: the Lodz Ghetto, Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and Dachau, among others. My father must have been a bold and gutsy young man, and based on advice from another prisoner who told him, "Tell them you have a trade," lied to the SS that he was a barber. My mother managed to stay with her two sisters throughout the ordeal, a miracle in itself, a bond of love and family that generated inner reserves of strength they desperately needed. My parents met in the chaotic moments of liberation, rescued by American GIs from a German prison train, almost certainly destined to a fate of death. But 75 years ago, they were not my parents. They were victims of the most brutal systematic assault by any state on any people in modern times. 1942 was a momentous year of history. It began with a conference outside Berlin, where a small group of mid to high-ranking German officials met to plan the implementation of what they called the final solution of the Jewish question. There were only 15 people at the meeting. Imagine that, only 15 to plan the extinction of a people. Their plans focused on the establishment of extermination centers, the most famous being Auschwitz-Birkenau, which began its systematic killings that spring. As officials were making plans and coordinating train schedules, and as contractors worked constructing barracks, gas chambers, and crematoria, most could not have imagined what would soon befall them, nor could the world. By August of 1942, the U.S. government received the first authoritative information that the Germans had developed a plan to murder every Jew in Europe. The State Department had the report confirmed within 3 months, but unfortunately tried to suppress the information. When word did get out, thanks to people like Rabbi Stephen Wise, some found it hard to believe. And sadly, even today, the shocking horror of it, the scale and scope of it, the unprecedented nature of it, make the Holocaust an easy target for the denialism of anti-Semites. By the end of 1942, the Germans and their collaborators had murdered almost 4 million Jewish men, women, and children, and millions of others deemed undesirable based on the Nazi racist ideology. Among those killed that year were probably my grandparents. I do not know. I do know that my parents taught me about survival, hope and resilience, about the possibilities of human nature, good and bad, and about the importance of memory. Memory is a part of the special bond of that our family shares. But they also taught me that memory is not enough. We must learn, we must reflect, we must question, and above all, we must always act. Thank you. We will now begin the candle lighting ceremony, and it will be my honor to invite Holocaust survivors, accompanied by members of Congress, to light the candles. We will be assisted in the ceremony by Shira Godin, a sophomore at Charles E. Smith Jewish Day School and a graduate of the museum's Youth Leadership Program, bringing the lessons home. Inspired by her grandmother, Nessie, a Holocaust survivor and museum volunteer, Shira hopes to become a role model and leader among youth in her community. I would like to ask Senator Roy Blunt to stand by the first candle. The first candle will be lit by Ruth Bernstein and Peter Feigor. Ruth's family fled from Berlin to Amsterdam and eventually got out on the last ship from Rotterdam to the U.S. Ruth's grandmother was denied a visa and was killed by the Nazis. Peter, also born in Berlin, fled with his family to Vienna, then Belgium, and then Vichy, France. His parents were murdered in Auschwitz. May I invite Senator Chris Coons to stand by the second candle. The second candle will be lit by Anya and Marcel Dreimer. Anya's family was deported from Poland to a Soviet forced labor camp, but they were eventually able to get to Ukraine, where they remained until the war. Marcel and his family were forced into the ghetto in Drohobych, Poland. They later escaped to a nearby village where they were hidden by a Ukrainian family, first in a stable and later in a hall. Anya and Marcel are both museum volunteers. Thank you. Senator Patrick Leahy, may I ask you to stand by the third candle. The candle will be lit by Rita Rubenstein and Helena Peabody. Rita was born in Romania and was deported with her family to a ghetto in Transnistria. Later, after bribing soldiers, they went to another ghetto and were helped by a local family until liberation. Helena was born in Krakow. Her mother obtained false documents from a priest for herself and her two daughters. They lived as Catholics, always fearing exposure until the end of the war. Rita and Helena are also both volunteers at the museum. May I invite Congressman David Kustoff to stand by the fourth candle. This candle will be lit by Irene Weiss and Manny Mandel. Irene was born in Czechoslovakia. After being forced into the Munkac ghetto, Irene and her family were deported to Auschwitz, where her mother and four of her siblings were gassed. Irene and her sister were selected for forced labor and survived a death march. Manny and his mother were among a group of Hungarian Jews traded for trucks and other material in negotiations between Adolf Eichmann and Rudolf Kastner, a member of the Jewish Rescue Committee. The group was deferred to Bergen-Belsen for 6 months, and later they were able to get to Switzerland. Both Irene and Manny volunteer at the museum. Thank you. Congressman Ed Royce, may I ask that you stand by the fifth candle. The fifth candle will be lit by Esther Starobin and Harry Markowitz. Esther was sent by her parents from Germany to England on a kinder transport. Her family was deported to a camp in France, and later her parents were sent to Auschwitz and killed. Harry was born in Berlin. Shortly before Kristallnacht, Harry and his family fled Berlin to Antwerp. Later, fearing he would be selected for forced labor, Harry's family moved the family to Brussels, where they separately went into hiding until liberation. Harry and Esther are also museum volunteers. Now I would like to ask Congressman Brad Schneider to stand by the sixth candle. The sixth candle will be lit by Marcel Hodak and Ray Goldfarb. Marcel and his family moved from Paris to Vichy, France, after the French citizenship of his Romanian-born parents were revoked. His family blended in with the local population, attended church, and survived there until liberation. Ray was born in Poland. Following the German invasion, Ray and her mother escaped to a nearby ghetto, then joined a group of partisans in the forest, surviving there until liberation. Both Marcel and Ray volunteer at the museum. Thank you all very much.
Please rise for El Malay Rakamin, Prayer for the Dead. It will be chanted by cantor Tom King, followed by survivor Nat Shafir, a Holocaust survivor from Romania, will lead us in reciting Kaddish.
El Malay Rakamin, Shoken Bamromin, Hamtsem Menucha Nechona, Al Kanfei HaShekinah, B'malot Kedoshim U'Tohorim, Kezohar Harakia, Masirim, Et Kol HaNeshamot Shel 6 מיליוני היהודים, חללי השואה באירופה, שנהרגו, שנשחטו, שנשרפו ושנשרפו על קידוש השם בידי המרצחים הגרמנים ועוזריהם משאר העמים באושוויץ, טרבלינקה, מיידנק, מאטהאוזן, ברגן-בלזן, סוביבור ושאר מחנות ההשמדה שהלכו לעולמם, ובעבור שכל הקהל מתפלל לעילוי נשמותיהם, לכן בעל הרחמים יסתרם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ביצרו לביצרו החיים את נשמותיהם, אדוני הוא נחלתם בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם, ויעמדו לגורלם לקץ הימים,
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, ויצמח פורקני וקרב משיחי, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירם בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרבה מן שמיה וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Please remain standing for the singing of the Hymn of the Partisans, led by Cantor King, and the retirement of the flags.
Ready. Up. Soll nicht kein Mal aus, du gehst dem letzten Weg. Trotz Himmeln bleiene, verstellen bleue Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show. Svetter Peugt von uns trott mir seinen da. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show. Svetter Peugt von uns trott mir seinen da. Es wird die Morgensonne begilden uns dem Heind, und der Nächten wird verschwinden mit dem Feind. Nur euch versamen wird die Sonnen der Kajor. Wie a Parolson geht das Lied von dort zu dort. Nur euch versamen wird die Sonnen der Kajor. Wie a Parol soll geht das Lied von dort zu dort. Never say that you have reached your journey's end. No leaden skies a bitter future may portend. For the hour for which we yearn may yet arrive, and our marching step will thunder we survive. For the hour for which we yearn will yet arrive, and our marching step will thunder we survive.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain by your seats until the President departs. This concludes our program. Thank you for sharing our commitment to Holocaust remembrance.